everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. You'll have to forgive me, I'm filming this on my webcam with my bird at my side. There's a storm outside, he doesn't like that, and I realized that the intro I shot had no audio, so this is my quick solution, so thank you for putting up with it. Anyway, today it's about retro gaming. You're not going to want to miss this. Child of the 80s here, and I love my vintage video games. So, I was at the flea market, not knowing, what or if I would get anything. Came across this setup with a little TV, and pretty soon I'm a kid again. I don't think I ever wasn't, but it's awesome. It's supposedly 620 video games built in that aren't mentioned explicitly anywhere on the box. It's all very intentional. And I'm sure you can figure out sort of the details here. But it turns out you don't really get that many games in these systems. Usually you get maybe like a third or a quarter of that, and the names just sort of repeat. Then I look over and I see this. And I'm like, Super Nintendo? That was like the high-end system that when I was a kid. Like, I had this, but barely. And it was, kind of when it was on the decline. But my friend, who was always one-upping me, he had the Super Nintendo system. So when I saw this, my initial thought was, well, that's incredible. By the way, I paid $20 for this and $40 for this. That's a pretty fair price. Not incredible, but it's not awful. And my thought was, wow, I get all the SNES games as well. That was me sort of having a moment of lack of judgment, because I'm pretty sure, even though it says 821 games, this is going to have the same game set, the 8-bit games. In fact, it even says on here that it has 8-bit games, 821 8-bit games. And obviously the Super Nintendo was a 16-bit system. So I think that it's sort of a different shell. That being said, this has a couple of benefits, including the fact it does have HD output with the HDMI. You can load your own ROMs on here with the SD card. And this one is just a composite output. So yeah, I love this stuff. And this doesn't get anywhere near the viewership that our record player shows get, but this is just an indulge me here kind of a moment, because this is something that I love absolutely. Mini game anniversary edition entertainment system. What kind of entertainment system? Built-in 620 classic games. So here we go with the reveal, and we've got our composite video cable. So it doesn't even have full-size jacks on the unit. It looks like it's going to have this TRS, and that on the other end will have the RCS. This is a pretty cheap cable, you can tell. No big surprise. No big surprise. Completely novelty, this is cheapo novelty stuff. Okay, so here are the controllers. They do give you two. Now, when I was playing this in the store, I was impressed with the fact that the controllers were full size, and they had the same feel that I remember the original having. And it's been a long time since I had my NES. And I don't know, is that an original plug? I'm not sure if that's the same style there, but yeah, look at that. That is so nostalgic, this squared off thing. But the buttons, the D-pad and both of these buttons, these ones as well, have a good feel to them. They have the right feeling to them. This feels overall a bit lighter than I remember. I don't know if maybe it's just my memory. It's amazing as a kid, you come across stuff that you used to have as a kid, and your perspective, you find out, was way different when you were a little kid. But this does feel good. It's got a good click to it. Oftentimes, these clone consoles will have mushy buttons, and it actually has real rubber start and select buttons. So that is great. Obviously, there's two of them. And then the console itself, the absolute nostalgia. So the controller's plugging in right down there. That's all correct. We've got a power and a reset button there. And you'll see that this is very miniature compared to the original Nintendo Entertainment System, which was considerably larger, because this doesn't play cartridges. All its games are built in. So on the back, we've got a little USB connection and the jack for that TRS. On the bottom, some ventilation. And that's all there is to it. This is fairly light as well. They can fit, this is a circuit board about this big. I've got this SUP branded portable Game Boy clone that has probably the exact same game selection and menu system, and it's even smaller than this. So they can fit a lot in a small space. This is probably a blob chip and running ROMs like that. Also in the box, we've got the user manual and the game list as well. Built in 620 games. Looks like this opens up. I have to look at this closer and see exactly how many repeats are on here, but it should have all of our favorites. Mario, Contra, all of that stuff. Okay, let's set that aside for a minute and bring this in, and still fun. I mean, it's obviously not the same as the original. As a kid, the allure and the magic of playing video games was such a novelty. I mean, it's something that had never really been seen. The idea of having these fancy systems, in your house was a fairly new concept. Okay, so here are the controllers. Man, this is nostalgic. So we've got that famous shape and layout. Buttons also feel good and clicky, and rounded. It just feels good. I remember this takes me back to many spend the nights at my friend's house where he had his NES. Interesting connection there, different than the other system. This looks a bit higher end. Looks like there's some shielding on there. Overall, this system costs twice as much, so I'm assuming it's overall a better system. Wow, they even include the HDMI cable. I did not expect that. I did not expect that. So it does include the HDMI cable, the power supply, and then the little miniature. Look at this thing. Oh, sweet. These switches actually work. And does that, okay, the reset button doesn't do anything, but this actually is the power switch. I thought that'd be just decorative. Obviously, the slot is not real. The color seems a little off too. It seems kind of like blueberry color. Maybe it was that way, but I seem to remember it was the same gray. Maybe it was sort of a bluish color. Let me know down in the comments below. The coloring on this looks accurate. This one looks a bit off to me. So on the back, we've got the SD card slot. Oh, it looks like the SD card comes already in there. It is a 256 meg card. Interesting. So I wonder if that's where the games are loaded currently. That's very, very interesting. So you could conceivably add to that game selection. This has a USB micro, and then obviously the HDMI, little foam pads on the bottom, and on the front. Where do we put the controllers? Where do these flip open? Oh, okay, this whole panel. I see what they've done. Okay. I was like, there's no place to put the controllers in. The original controllers would have plugged in to something that looked like that, but they've blocked it with this piece there. That's cool. I think that's really neat. So, all right. So next thing we need to do is get a monitor and hook these bad boys up and test them out. Okay, so what I've done is I've put everything back in the boxes, but without the packaging. So initially I threw away these boxes, and I'm like, where am I going to put this stuff? And the boxes are a great way to keep them. They're good boxes. So let's go ahead and set the NES one up, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. This will be fun. Now, I know that a show like this only appeals to a certain, portion of our audience. And for those that it does appeal to, I hope you enjoy it because, this show is somewhat self-fulfilling. And it always has been, because if I am not passionate about what I'm doing, or at least interested, then I would never be able to do this show for this many years. You know what I mean? It has to be stuff that I'm interested in. And what I am interested in changes from time to time. So I may be into video games right now, but, a month from now, I may not be. I may be more interested in reel-to-reel tape stuff, in which case you will see more reel-to-reel tape stuff. So, all right, going to connect this. The extent of what I own of my original NES setup is zero, nothing. My brother, who's really into gaming, has some of that stuff. I'm not sure how much is left, but he's built like arcade cabinets and things like that. But as for me, I don't have anything left from those NES days. Now, a friend of mine has given me a couple of NES cartridges. So this is the extent of my authentic original NES game collection, but they're super nostalgic. check this out, size comparison wise. So the console, and I use that term loosely because it's basically it's housing a chip, a blob, and that's about it, is much smaller, at least length and width wise, to an actual cartridge of an old NES system. So anyway, there you go. Top Gun, that's a good one. I had I had an LCD Top Gun game, not an NES one, but this is still a cool. This is also a cool arcade game. And then to play those, I picked this up a few years ago. I don't know if I ever put it on the show, but this was like $5 at a thrift store. So it's a we'll call it a third party console solution. Doesn't try to look like an NES, but it's designed to play NES games. So it's essentially an NES. Put your cartridge in like that, and you plug in your controllers. I have the controllers, just a lot of clutter here, so I didn't bring them in for the purpose of this. But it gets the job done. It works. So is there an eject button? No, I think you just yank it out. Yeah, feels like you're breaking something when you yank it out. But this is my NES, as it were. But with 3 games, I don't hook it up often because I have a lot of, or I should say a few solutions in addition to this that will play those games on different hardware. Heck, and while we're at it, I might as well show this again. So this is a Sega Genesis. Obviously, this one does not look like the original Sega Genesis, but it is officially licensed. It's by At Games. At Games makes handhelds. They make console-type devices like this. They do a great job. So it's all officially licensed, which I appreciate. This is the base model with the composite outputs, and they also made or make a one with an HD output via HDMI. It's a lot sharper, even though the source footage will be standard def. But this does play cartridges as well, and just like the NES, I've got maybe 3 Sega cartridges. And the controllers look like the real deal. I mean, it's a fun solution. This also has about 180 built-in Sega Genesis games, which is tons of fun. All right. We're not here to look at this. Let's back to the NES. Okay, time to power one of these on. Pressing the power button. There's a reset button, so it'll bring up a menu, and then hitting the reset button will take you back to that menu when you want to pick a new game. In order to demonstrate, I'm not going to point this at a screen. I am going to use a capture device. In this case, I'm using a ClearClick capture device. It has composite inputs as well as HDMI inputs, and it will save those recordings to SD card. So I'm going to insert the SD card, and then I'm going to edit the video in such a way that you can see what I'm recording on screen as I'm doing it. Okay, so we are recording the source directly to this capture device. I'm going to switch to the full screen mode so you can see exactly what I'm looking at. So the first thing we see is the menu system, and 620 in one. Don't get too excited because oftentimes these lists repeat themselves many times. So if there are 620 unique games, it would be a surprise. Next, you will notice that there's very strange titles in here you don't remember on the NES, such as Mario 12. That's because it never existed. There's a lot of, I wouldn't call them fake games, but definitely some sort of bloatware that they've added. And again, if you are expecting just like, what is this? What actually am I looking at here? Hitting the reset button again. Just enjoy it. And it was $20. It was $20. Now there will be, titles mixed in here as Mortal Kombat. I'm not sure if this is a real Mortal Kombat. Sometimes they'll actually strip out some copyright content and mix it in to sort of a new game. And it makes for an interesting experience hitting reset again. Every time you hit reset, you go back to that menu system. So you'll definitely see some things you recognize and some things that probably never existed in the real realm of Nintendo before. Definitely a lot of bloatware, but it's fun. I mean, just have fun. You know what I mean? Maybe you'll find some game you never knew existed that becomes your new favorite, and it's a blast to do. So let's go ahead and let's see if this is a real Pac-Man here of sorts. This looks like NES Pac-Man, so this might be the real deal here. And let's go ahead and chase some ghosts and not get killed, which is always a good way to live your life. So yeah, there's that. Going back to the menu again, let's go ahead and find another game. Scrolling, you can scroll through the menus page at a time. You can go down the list like that and just kind of look through it any which way that you want. Let's find something interesting here. How about F1 Race? This is very authentic NES looking. I remember this game. And let's go ahead and have a little race. These infinite racers. Okay, now got the Super Nintendo, and I use that term lightly because it's still 8-bit games. They don't have any 16-bit Super Nintendo games in here, at least none that I've found so far. That being said, I like this one better for a couple of reasons. One is you get the HDMI, so the signal's cleaner, although the composite on the other was not bad, not by any means. But it's nice to connect to, you know, like a 4K TV and whatnot. It looks really good on there. But also the fact that this is a bit more games to choose from and the menu system is a little bit more slick. Okay, so let's go ahead and power it on. But as you can see, it's cool. I like this menu system. I like the background. I like the fact that it shows you sort of cover art. And lots of games in here. I feel like there may be more original games in here. The thing about it is, in addition to a lot of Nintendo games, there's some Sega Genesis games in here. There's apps. I mean, you can play Angry Birds on here, which is weird. But yeah, it's an interesting assortment to say the least. But it's got the classics for sure. But I do have to say this, the picture quality is great, and it's just a lot of fun. It's absolutely fun. You can adjust your display, by the way. This is stretching what used to be a 4:3 image into 16:9. That's why the pixels aren't exactly oriented correctly, but I'd rather have it fill up my screen and be slightly out of its normal aspect ratio than to have a small sort of square on my big rectangular TV. Yep, I'm still bad at gaming, but this is cool. I think this is very, very fun. All right, my friends, and that's going to do it. Thank you as always. Happy record hunting, happy video gaming. See you next time.